me to start that, Patrice? Or?
Yes,
okay.
Mark.
Great, thank you. So I'll call this meeting to order. I'm going to read our normal virtual meeting statement since this is a public meeting. Good afternoon. Due to the governor's order, all members of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee are participating virtually today. And for virtual meetings, committee members will be muted until asked to be heard. And at that time, they'll be recognized and will be unmuted. When there is a vote, it will be necessary to take a roll call vote. A committee member will be recognized and will raise their hand and state their vote. Today's meeting is a public meeting. The meeting will also be live streamed on the city's YouTube channel, which can be accessed at www.cityofws.org/2682/video. And a recording of today's meeting will be available by next Tuesday on the city's website. So with that, Patrice, I think we can get into the meat of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Just for anyone viewing on YouTube, I just wanted to just give a quick review of kind of where we are in this type of funding. So back during the budget process, the City Council decided to form a resolution that would form a committee to look at addressing social justice and poverty initiatives if they had $1 million. That group was called the Community Investments Review Committee. They were commissioned to do this work for 3 months and formulate recommendations for $1 million. Since that time, the City Council has identified $1 million and wanted to move to phase 2. Phase 2 allowed for the general population community to be able to apply for these resources in the 5 categories that the CERT committee identified. And so those categories were grants for social justice and anti-poverty initiatives, long-term anti-poverty and social justice strategies, broadband internet access and expansion and training, which will be handled by our internal information and systems department, and then heritage preservation and education, and then mentorship and neighborhood capacity building. And so those applications went out at the end of December. They were due early January. We received 118 applications. And so the Citizen Bond Oversight Committee was asked to review and score those applications and then provide a recommendation back to council.
Wonderful.
Okay. So next on the agenda was actually reviewing the score. So I'll share my screen. Let's see. Okay. Does everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. So just for anyone that's viewing, this is the score sheet, and the committee was given basically 4 questions to review each of the applications, to provide scores, with the highest score being 16 and the lowest score being 0. And so what you see is the average committee score on this column, the average city panel score here, and then the combines. Obviously, this was rounded up, so we would have, 12.98, but these are the average combined scores. And so what you see is a ranking here from the highest score down to the lowest score for each category. There is a note if the agency said that they could utilize partial funding or not. So this particular agency says no partial funding greater than 15%. And so I've noted that, there's a question mark where it's a little uncertain. I think this agency would take it. But the wording was interesting. So, so at this point, Mark, I'll turn it over to you on how you would like to review the scores and then potentially begin the allocations. And so I've marked for each category the maximum, I don't have it on this spreadsheet, dollar amounts that we could total up in each category.
Okay. Thank you, Patrice, for doing all this. This is really helpful to sort of frame everything. So when we were preparing for this, Gail and I had a call with Patrice and Ben, and we were sort of talking through how might we sort of get this, into a format that we can then assign dollar values and recommend those dollar values ultimately to council. And so it seemed that the best one way that we could do it, that I think is the best way to do it, is to take a look at the combined score, the average score, which would include city staff and the committee scores, and sort of let's look at the lower end of that scale, and let's determine if it is under a certain amount of points. Perhaps we go ahead and take those particular applications off the list, because at a certain level, my thinking on this is, they did not rise to the level of what I would call even the median or the average on the committee level, and in most cases the staff level as well, to be at those lower scores, which would tell me that the scorers from either of those two groups felt their applications were not as strong as some of the others. And so, when I looked at this list, I sort of went to the number 10. If it's 10 or below, to me, I would consider sort of removing them from the discussion. So in this particular category, that would start there with the Guiding Institute for Developmental Education. But I'd like to throw that out to this group to sort of talk about that process to sort of shrink this list down to a lesser number of applications in order to potentially make the grants that we would recommend more impactful to those organizations above that line. So I would open that up to this group just to sort of weigh in and see if that made some sense to the group.
This is Brenda. That's exactly where I think we need to have our cutoff point. And even as I look at the agencies and look at the committee and the staff scores, I think that 10 is a reasonable number.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Definitely. And Gail, how about you? Is 10 the right number in your mind?
Yeah, I wouldn't go I certainly think we shouldn't go below 10, because and that's still going to give us way plenty to consider. And because I don't want to just arbitrarily say, you're the next one below, zip, but I think 10's reasonable, very reasonable.
Okay. One of the things that I said, let's use that as our sort of guiding principle to start with, and that'll shrink these lists in each category down to a more manageable list. The other thing that strikes me, and maybe this is perhaps a lesson learned in the future, a lot of people ask for a lot, and many people ask for the maximum for that particular category. So I look at this one, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 requests above that line for over $100,000. Yes. So, in a $200,000 category. So I think we've got to sort of right size the ask to some extent based on the available funds. I think that would be the next thing in my mind. And I don't know what that is yet. I think there needs to be a little bit of discussion about that. But it also looks to me that in this category, with the exception of Triad Restorative Justice, everyone said they could use whatever they could be offered to do good work. And so that's a positive thing. I don't see anybody saying they have to have the full amount of their ask in order to do what they do as an organization. So
I really have a little bit of concern with someone saying no to partial funding.
Yeah, I would agree.
$1 is better than 0. And I just have a little bit that my manners that I was taught says you're ungrateful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Brenda. I think that's a challenging ask to say, oh, it's all or nothing.
You know,
Yeah.
give it to me or else. And I just don't subscribe to that notion. That's not my values.
Well, if I can just offer one observation, I don't know that I would assume that everybody who says no is saying no because they have a mentality of all or nothing. It may be in some cases, and I think we have to look at each individual application and the organization, that they're simply trying to be transparent and honest about whether or not they think they can carry on the program, right? The kind of the program they're trying to do with that grant money without the full funding. So I think we probably need to look at each individual situation where that is the case, and not just assume that, you know, it's a measure of bad management.
I think when you, in a conversation, if you say that, it resonates differently than when we read that.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I certainly agree. And I think that's why, you know, it may be worth having that conversation if we really had the bandwidth to do so. You know, there's a few questions that I had as I looked through some of these, and I haven't gotten a chance to look through all three categories of them that we're responsible for. But there's a few questions that I had that I wonder if they can't be addressed, you know, by some of the support staff before we meet again on Friday to actually allocate funds. So
we're not going to meet on Friday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were talking at the beginning, if possible, we're going to try to see if we can make the allocations today. You know, we'll still reserve the time on Friday, Reverend, but the thought was, if we can, let's go ahead and try to make those recommendations today.
Fair enough. Okay.
So thank you for jumping on, by the way.
Sorry to be late.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I wanted to make sure you heard the initial thought process about the scoring. Were you on when I was talking about trying to shrink this list to a more manageable number of applicants, and we were using, to do that, the average combined score of 10 or less would sort of fall in the lower score category, and so we would focus our energy on 11 and above is where we had set that line. That seemed to make sense to everyone else. I did not ask you that question specifically.
I did hear that reference to 10. My only hesitation is looking and seeing that, you know, Bed in a Book, for instance, and Forsyth Community, you know, bail fund, that they are both falling potentially below that threshold. And I thought particularly Bed in a Book, you know, had a compelling case for some measure of funding. So that's my only hesitation, is depending on how hard and fast we're going to use that set of parameters, you know. So,
well, why don't we do this? Let's go to each of the categories and let's look at what falls at 10 and below, and do what you just said, Reverend. If anyone has any particular organization that they would like to put into consideration that's below that line, let's talk about them and decide whether because we can make that determination on this call. You know, do we want to put them above the line or below the line?
Yeah.
So the two that you mentioned were Bed in a Book and Forsyth County Community Bail Fund, right? Yeah,
those two. I mean, the dwelling as well, I thought was well done, but Bed in a Book and Forsyth Community Bail Fund, they certainly stuck out to me. So, you know, I guess one of the questions, and I don't remember this maybe from prior emails, is how much money do we have to allocate, for instance, in this first group total?
200,000 is the first grouping.
So we have a total of 200,000 for everybody.
Correct. In that first category, yes. Okay. And then as you'll see, like where Patrice was just scrolling down there in that long-term anti-poverty, the row that's in orange, you see that you had $150,000 in that category. There's 190 in the next one.
Okay. So that's the total amount of money that we have to allocate amongst these folks.
Right. And all of that, I think, equals $1 million between the different categories, about Is that right, Patrice?
It actually equals about 700,000, and that's only because there's 5 categories. You only see 4 that the community was able to apply for. The 5th category was broadband internet access that's going to be managed in-house by our IS department.
That's right. That's right. Thank you.
Right.
So we've got 700-ish thousand total, but they have to be allocated specific to the category that they applied in.
So I think what's important for me was to kind of get that overarching, like, what is the accomplishment of this goal or like this grant? So like for the grants for social justice and anti-poverty, like what is the, like, we're trying to get as much money to as many organizations that are specifically targeting social justice and anti-poverty, correct? And I think just remembering, Brenda had said earlier, like also taking into account how many people are going to be reached as a consideration, because some of these applications, it was only going to be like, 40 people. And then other people said, well, we can reach 6,000 people. And I think that that's really important to also consider. That was something that I made notes on every single one. So
yeah, I did too. Some are startups and some are what I call on a wish list. And then some were for staffing. But I think overall, when you have a limited amount of money, our responsibility, I think, is to go for the biggest bang for the buck, the impact that is greater across the community, and who can deliver that impact. And so that, as I said earlier, some of them gave us tons of information, but it was very narrowly focused on the key question. Well, what are you going to do with the money?
Right. Right. And there were also, I felt like there was a number of applications that gave a lot of background, like really interesting facts, data, but they didn't really tell us what they were going to do.
Exactly.
They gave us a really good description of what they were trying to overcome,
right,
but not how they were going to do it.
Use of funds. I mean, that was a constant use of funds. What do you do with this money?
And then I also looked too at some of the requests that were 2, 3, 4 times their current budget. And not to say that might not be what they needed, but that's a huge leap for some entities. And so then I was really trying to figure out, is the budget realistic for what they're trying to accomplish?
Right.
And then the way that I approached reviewing all of these is I started with the smallest batch first. So I felt like I could get through that really quickly and easily. And that was actually heritage and preservation and education. And I think that the goal for that is really clear too. So I don't know, I would suggest that maybe that's where we start so that we can go ahead and like feel like, okay, we've accomplished something, we have an idea, and that also sets the tone. Then I moved to mentorship and neighborhood capacity. I think that was next. Yeah, that's kind of how I took them so that I understood, that kind of told that story too, right? Like it was easier than the broader, like, oh my gosh, we're trying to tackle social justice and like anti-poverty. Like starting off kind of small and breaking it down that point. So I would maybe suggest we do that.
I think that's a fine idea. So if we used our same sort of cutoff level on this, if you drew that same line under heritage, preservation, education, Patrice, that would put you just above the Memorial Industrial Community Development Corporation. So let me ask this question first. Is there, of those 5 that are below, are there any of those 5 that anyone has a particular desire to move above the line?
No.
No.
Okay. All right. So Melissa, I love your concept of how many people do they reach?
Right.
And I think this would apply to all the categories, that same sort of concept. I did not write that down as I was going through it, so I can't quickly pull that number up. But did you happen to do that?
Yeah, I can do that. So like, for example, Smart Start was about 160. Let's see, St. Paul had 40 to 50 students. Habitat for Humanity said they could reach 200 plus. Acción Hispana was
Right.
17 total students. Triad Cultural, I don't have, theirs is probably fairly large because they're going to work with the Winston-Salem Forsyth County school system to fund a heritage center at the Urban League. So I would say that that's a fairly large.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, the NC Black repertoire, they said they could potentially reach millions with the funding. Happy Hills was 50 students. Hoops for Life, they said that they would help an additional 10 families per what they're, so 10 plus more families. Sherman Academy said 60 to 100 people. Habitat for Humanity, they had two.
Mm-hmm.
They have two in this. One was 200 plus people, and then another was 10 to 15 people.
We need to make sure we know which one we're voting on when we put the dollars associated with that.
Yeah, because both of them, they asked for 50,000.
Or do they even need those?
Yeah, and I don't know. And then Hope to Thrive. Did I do that one yet? No.
No.
That one's like 10 to 20 elderly, 1 to 3 youth, 5 to 10 residents.
So you're like 15 to 30.
Yeah.
Now, this is an example of one that has applied several times. Should we not look to see what the impact is in the other categories? Because
yeah. Boston Thurman, this one was like, they wanted the marker, like Boston Thurman has historic preservation of buildings and then a large marker. So I didn't write down how many people because I didn't know that, compared to some of the other applications for me personally, this one didn't seem as compelling. I'm going to be honest. And then the Royal Curtin Drama Guild was 120 people.
Did you have one for the Silver Lining Youth Services?
Yeah, sorry, 100 students.
100. That is a helpful data point to know there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have $190,000 in this category to allocate, and most of these seem to be within the $25,000 to $50,000 range for the most part in this particular category. The Triad Cultural Arts Heritage Center and Boston Thurman United are big asks, and so. Let me think about this for a second. So I'm going to use my calculator here off to the side.
Well, I think if you go back to what are they asking for? What is the money to be used for? And it's great to have a marker, but is a marker going to help people?
No.
Yeah, that's how I felt. I felt like the Boston Thurman I can't see how, again, it's a nice thing to have, but what's the impact to people?
Right.
Yeah, because some of these were more focused on education and preserving historic, just more education. And I felt like those were really compelling, more so than, yes, a marker over University Parkway.
Yeah, I agree with you. I felt like it got a high score because it was heritage preservation, but it's not going to affect people's lives the way some of the other ones would.
Well, and if we're looking at the Triad Cultural Arts Heritage Center, part of that money would be going to fund a heritage center at the Urban League, which is really preserving, and talking about the history within our community. So I think that that has a much larger breadth of reach than the marker. So I think out of those two, if we were just going to go ahead and take one off, I would go ahead and recommend that we take off Boston Thurman United for this one.
I would tend to agree with you on that one, Melissa. The other thing I think that's driving their score up a little bit is there was the category of, are they a trusted community resource? And they certainly are.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, the Boston Thurman community, I mean, they think a lot of Boston Thurman United as an organization. So I think that probably helped drive it up a tad.
Well, and they also have other requests in too. So we'll be talking about them more than once.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I think we should take Boston Thurman off right now in this category.
Agreed.
Agreed. All right. So if you took them off, and you look above the line, the average, if you gave everybody the same amount, the average would be $14,615. So that's sort of just a base point to say, if you just spread it equally, that's what that would be, which would get really nobody their full request on the list. And in some cases, it would be significantly less than their request. But that's not to say we shouldn't do it that way. I would also look at this in terms of the combined ranking, and so if you looked at this sort of like, percentages, for instance, if you said, if an organization falls in the 16 to 14, level, they should get a certain percentage of the max. If they fall in the 13 to 12 level, they should get the next percentage, and then the 11 should get the remainder, and so you could almost look at it like 40%, 30%, 20%. Where that's going to get a little wonky is in the counts, because there's more in the 13 to 12 than there are in the 16 to 14. So let me think about how we might accomplish that. Well, yeah, I think you could probably still do it the same way. I think it's going to drive the numbers down a little bit in the 13 and 12s if we did it that way. But the 16 to 14s would get a fairly high percentage based on that math. So if you said 190, 40% of that. So if you said you were going to distribute $76,000 over the top three in this case, between Smart Start, St. Paul, and Habitat, that would put you at, and if you divided that equally, that would put them at about $25,000 a piece.
Mark, what would it look like? I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Let's look at the request from Habitat. I'm not certain that we need to give them to fund both.
I would agree with that.
Let's look. Patrice, can you tell us what both of those requests were for?
I made notes that one was for the youth empowerment program, and then the other was for a youth culinary program. I would imagine that probably the youth empowerment program scored higher. That would be my guess, but.
Okay, so the youth employment program is the first one. They're serving 200 plus. Has served as an expansion of the education and wraparound services provided to homeowner families, in addition to other youth living in the communities we serve. Its mission is to engage underserved young people through community-based education, mentoring, and enrichment programs to help develop skills and strengthen ties to the family. That looks like that's their mission. Okay, so here are the goals. Let me just kind of glance down. Okay, a commitment of $50,000 would ensure we are able to continue to expand this vital program, serving more youth in the community who desperately need structure. Okay, the goals of the program are listed here. Youth will learn life and job skills needed to successfully manage their daily lives to help break end or prevent the cycle of poverty. Youth will be encouraged to develop positive self-esteem or self-images, build positive relationships, and they will earn a minimum of 20 hours of sweat equity with various community organizations. They're learning the importance of giving back.
I think that particular request gives much more and is much more effective than the culinary program. And it has a larger, the audience is larger. And I think it ties more closely to, you know, families moving into the new Habitat homes and the children aspect of it. So that would be the one that, in my judgment, we should look to fund.
I like the reach of that one a lot better. I will also, and Reverend Ford, you were going to ask a question about the math. I will say the math I just did doesn't equal out to be 100%. I just was just doing that in my calculator. I was like, something's off. So there's 10% that I don't have in there somewhere.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about, and it may or may not make sense if we're going to, you know, get particular here as we just did with Habitat for Humanity, is I wonder what the math calculates out to if you use these scoring numbers in column J and turn them into percents and say, if you got a 13, we're going to give you 13% of the money, the total money. If you got an 11, we're going to give you 11% of the total money, and what that starts to add up to, you know, that sort of thing. I think you're going to end up getting over 100%, which means you're still going to have to then go back and make some cuts. But just as a baseline.
I can probably do that if y'all give me just a second. I've got it pulled up live on my computer. Let's see if I go to those that are above that. So, all right. So if you totaled all those numbers up, well, hold on. We were going to take out of that the wrong one. We were going to take out of that one of the habitats, the second one.
Yeah, that would be my suggestion.
In Boston Thurman United, right?
If we take those two out, it may actually make this work better. I'm not sure because I'm not.
So that equals out to be 151. So,
so if we can find a way to trim that 51%, you know, obviously, or just deal with that, it would give us a baseline. You know, it's just another way to get a baseline of funding for everybody, and then we'll just trim it back to that 100%. So.
Let me do a little math over here while y'all are talking.
Ben, let me ask this question, since this is, you know, kind of a side piece, but if we were to go back up to that first category, I know one of the things that stuck out to me was the West Sprague Street request, if I recall right. Yeah, the West Sprague Street revitalization project that was essentially asking for money to repair streets and whatnot. And what bothered me about that, obviously it doesn't, you know, fit into the category of what we're trying to do here, but what bothered me about that is why that person or group felt the need to come to this grant process for basic, you know, streets caretaking and all that. Whose ward are they in? Have they had conversations with their aldermen? What's going on there?
Reverend Ford, I think that's a good point. And we can certainly, city staff can certainly reach out to them, you know, outside of this process to just hear their concerns, maybe give some more specific feedback from them as far as, you know, locations, you know, where they want, you know, more connectivity, that type of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I think this process is probably not the ideal, you know, route, because, you know, investing in sidewalks is something we would finance with bonds, that type of thing. So I can make a note here in our minutes, you know, that staff would follow up with this particular group to at least get more information about their, you know, their needs.
Isn't that in the South Ward?
You know, I'd have to see the map. I mean, it could be in the southeast.
It's Southeast Ward.
Southeast Ward.
And who's the alderman there? Is that James Taylor or is that somebody else?
Yes, sir.
That's James Taylor, right. So, you know, I think it'd definitely be worth looping in Councilman Taylor into this conversation. even potentially before you reach out to these folks, because he may be familiar with them. There may be a history here. I don't know. But it's troubling to me, you know, to see folks, you know, who either feel so disconnected from kind of the city governmental process and the way things are accomplished, or otherwise ignored or aggrieved that they, you know, are striking out here trying to get grant money through a somewhat unrelated grant, you know, to try to have their streets taken care of, you know, so.
We'll do that, Reverend Ford, because you're absolutely right. I mean, that money, technically, if what they wanted to do is to see it invested in sidewalks, well, then the city would basically retain that money, because we would be the ones actually, you know, constructing them, you know. So we'll follow up with Councilmember Taylor first.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
So, Patrice, if you wouldn't mind, write these numbers down in that column you're in now, and let's sum it up and make sure it equals out to be 190. But so for the first one, it would be 18,810. The next two would each be 17,556. The ones that are 13 would be 16,302. The 12 would be 15,048. And the 11s would be 13,794. Oh, actually, yeah, that one and the Boston Thurman one I counted as 0. Close. Somewhere I'm $608 off, but that, Reverend Ford, that's using your formula there. So basically each point in this particular category represented like 2/3 of a point, 2/3 of a percentage point.
So if we took, you know, and I did not read thoroughly Hope to Thrive and Royal Curtin Drama Guild, so if somebody thinks I'm being unfair here, please say so. But if we took that 608, you know, split it in two, which I think is 304, and just drop 304 off of each of these, Hope to Thrive and Royal Curtin Drama Guild, I think we're at 190,000, aren't we?
Yes, sir.
So if everybody's comfortable with that, that I'm not shortchanging them unnecessarily, that would be about as efficient as we can be here. And I think still, you know, respects these groups and what they're trying to do here.
I also want to point out that Sherman Academy has put in a request under another category for 50,000.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that is something, as we get to these other categories, that's a great point. You know, I've mentioned it before. We need to make sure that
Yes.
if somebody's requested multiple categories, which happen a lot.
Yeah, I know Sherman Academy requested 50. Hope to Thrive also requested another 40,000. That might be.
So what we can do is use this, you know, as a tentative thing, obviously, right? And then go back to these other categories, decide if, you know, we want to award that group in the other category instead. And then obviously we come back here and reallocate dollars to other groups. So.
And actually Hope to Thrive did 3 categories.
Yeah, they did.
You want to do you want to look and using that same methodology, you want to go through the mentorship next, since it happens to be the ones below it?
Yeah.
There's a fair number in this one. But if we use that cutoff point of 10, that would put everything above Grace Presbyterian.
Right.
And then we need to look at that New Life Nueva Vida, because they said no partial funding for this particular thing. And they were another that asked for several different grants in several different categories.
Well, take them off if they don't want any partial funding.
Well, yeah, because they won't get 37.4.
Yeah, I mean, they aren't going to be happy with whatever. And the dwelling says no partial funding.
So New Life New Vida, I think they asked for the same thing under different categories.
They did.
It was their plan was to have a mentoring program, but it was only going to help 30 individuals, and it's like a boxing and music recording type studio. So that was their ask.
Let me ask this question. With the New Life Nueva Vida, did they give an explanation as to why they said no to partial funding? Before we just, kind of cut them off? Because depending on what their explanation was, they may still be able to do something with partial funding, but they just don't want to concede to that,
They said with partial funding, there is no way to be fully successful and make a great impact in the city of Winston-Salem. We do understand and are firm believers that something is better than nothing. So they kind of mentioned that here.
Yeah.
We have crunched the numbers and came up with a compact budget that is suitable to the needs of the city and the demands of the people.
Well, one of the things I just want to say is somebody who's, worked in both the secular and the faith-based side with nonprofits for years and is doing so now on both sides, is that, the general kind of mentality when you're advising organizations that are going for grants is not to ask for anything less, than what, the available funding is in a particular category, and obviously make an argument, try to hopefully a persuasive one as to why you should receive that, and leave it to the funder in a process much like what we're doing right now to make their own decisions about whether or not to honor that. I hear a little bit of that in the New Life Nueva Vida based on what you read. I would be stunned if we made a decision, obviously, to give them less than the full funding, because this would allow for us that they would, send it back and say, no, we can't do with less. I think they just make an adjustment in the scale of the program. But I wouldn't have advised New Life Nueva Vida if they'd asked me to just, ask for a small amount of funding when they could ask for a total of 110,000, because no group knows how many other organizations are going to be putting in, and they don't necessarily know the mindset of the grant committee, and they don't know the methods that are going to be used. So why would you shoot for something other than what you can get in the best case scenario?
Yeah, I'm going to push back a little bit because, again, from my experience with nonprofits and then sitting on the foundation side and United Way side, nonprofits do sometimes submit numbers that are not absolute realistic numbers. And it's a wish list sometimes. And that's been my experience in this community. And I don't ever recall seeing anything that said no to a partial funding, which is why I was stunned when I read some of this. I just have not seen it in this community. Now, Gail, I know you've served on a number of boards as well.
Yeah. I have not seen that either. I think everybody asks for the moon, but generally they don't say you can't do it, with less. That's been my experience. But I don't know this group at all. So
I don't either. I don't know. That it's just unusual based on my service and tenure of serving in this community. Even now, I just have never seen anybody do that.
So let me be clear, because I agree with both of you, and I don't think we're at crosshairs here. One of the things that I noticed in looking at these applications, and this is something that perhaps, Brother Rowe, you can speak to others. First of all, these were very simplistic application forms.
Yes.
That did not ask for the kind of detail, both in terms of mission and vision of an organization, mission and vision of the project, and budgeting and all that kind of stuff that most of the foundation grants that I'm sure many of you all are familiar with typically ask for. And I'm sure that was intentional, and it probably made sense given that there's a relatively small pool of dollars in each category. So part of what that gets, and we saw that with some of these organizations, is that you have organizations coming with applications that would not pass muster with any major foundation in terms of the way they were prepared, how stuff was articulated, the amount of evidence that was given in terms of evidence-based, proof of what their program's going to do. And so I think we just need to keep that in mind, because again, at least in New Life Nueva Vida's explanation as to no, why they said no, I hear the kind of tension that they would have been forced to sort out in a more traditional funding application, right? And articulate and explain, and might have landed on a different box other than no through that process. But this was a very simplistic application process that it was, asked for here.
And I would say for theirs, based on the responses that they submitted, I would say that they would take the partial funding. They just don't prefer it.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I don't know about the dwelling. What did they say, Patrice, on theirs?
Hey guys, I'm here. I'm sorry, man. I must have missed whatever the notification this meeting was. That's my bad.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Welcome.
Hey.
You caught me on a hat day. So what are we doing today? Just kind of reviewing, taking an overview of these, or are we doing?
Yeah, we're going to try to get through it today. We've while Patrice is looking up this question, what we did, Brian, is we've made a determination that if the average score given between the this group and the city staff that rank these is 10 or lower, then we're going to draw a line above that. And those that are above that are sort of in the grant cycle, and those that are below that are not in that consideration. We'll have a conversation on each of these categories to make sure there's no one that falls below that we want to reconsider.
Okay.
And then, and Reverend Ford had a great methodology for doing this. We've been going through and we're saying, okay, how many, if you took all of those average scores and added them up of the ones that are above 11, what does that equal? And then how does that percentage equate? So given that, and given the maximum for that category, for instance, if you have a 15 as your average score, what is 15 points worth based on the math? And then we're using that as our guidepost, and then we can decide whether anything looks off. Where we're getting into some deeper discussion now is, whether or not someone says they could or could not use, or really whether they said they could not use partial funding.
Right.
And if that is truly the case, they're probably going to be removed from consideration. If it's not truly the case, then we'll remove that sort of note.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking at right now.
All right.
The dwelling says no, but then they said, however, we are committed to finding additional funding sources to reach our goal if necessary. So I put a question mark. I put no, but question mark, because they're saying they'll find additional resources. I'm assuming if they got partial funding.
Yeah, I think we can probably take that off. I would say that they would accept partial funding, and maybe this is a point of clarification for me and maybe some of the other committee members also. Let's assume that we recommend a grant and the city council approves that to somebody that says they'll need to go find other funding to make it happen, and they don't find that funding. What happens in that situation? Do they just return the money?
I'll never get it.
But we will enter into a contract, and there will be additional information we'll need from all of these agencies to verify they're truly a nonprofit and some other things if they are recommended for funding. But they will be under a contract, and there will be an expectation for them to meet the contractual obligations. So part of that is finding additional money to actually perform the programs that they are projecting to accomplished through the contract, we will intend for that to happen. If that doesn't happen because they could not find additional resources, then they would not receive payment, or they would then pay back if the payment is advanced. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
And it seems like looking at their description of what they would do, it looks like they're focused on housing rehab. So I mean, it would seem to me that, you know, if they only receive the city funding, they'll just be rehabbing fewer units.
Mm-hmm. That would make sense to me as well, Ben. Right. They just wouldn't reach as many people as they hoped.
Right. So I don't know if not receiving other funding sources would preclude them from still be able to move forward with the city grant. They just would not have the impact that they were aspiring to.
Right. Okay, so if we used our same math here, let me see,
Hey guys, I apologize for the inefficiency here, but I can't see any headers. I don't have any idea what these numbers are.
Okay, yeah, so the first column is the committee average score, this committee.
All right.
Second column is the score from the city staff. And then the third column is the combined between the two of them. Oh, there you go. Great, Patrice. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Let me make sure I did this right.
Do we want the same numbers of people being reached on
Yes.
this? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. 120 youth. Neighbors for Better Neighborhoods had 4,000 residents. Youth Life Skills was 20 people. Ministers Conference was 20 people. United Healthcare was 40 students. The dwelling was 450 to 500 people. Southside Rides was 30. Great Commission was 100. Hope to Thrive was 8 to 10 employees and 6 to 25 executive directors. That was Hope to Thrive. More Than Conquer was 50 people. Sherman Academy had 60 to 100 people. Carter Woodson School was 225 students. I'm not finding the dream team. Hold on.
Patrice, can you pull up the purpose for Hope to Thrive, what they were going to use that money for?
Okay, yes, give me 1 second. I was going to look at the dream team.
Yeah, because I don't know. I don't see where I.
Okay.
They said 20 per session.
20.
Oops.
20%, yeah.
Which you were saying? Which one?
The Hope to Thrive. Since it's all staff, I want to see what I can't remember what they were doing with it.
We developed a mentorship, apprenticeship, and training program for 4 restaurant owners in Winston-Salem. So there's an Indian restaurant, a Black-owned barbecue, Cody's, Triad, Taste of Triad, which is Black-owned, Carrabba's, white-owned. These partners have agreed to reach out to our communities in Poverty and East Winston to recruit and hire for their labor force to help move people through and out of poverty, as well as train and apprentice folks within the East Winston network.
So what are they doing with the money here? Okay.
So we are asking $20,000 to help support this program since the training and apprentice program is unpaid. We plan for this program to run for 6 months. We also support trainees with financial management support, free mental health support to explore relationships to money and poverty, and the mindset of poverty can subconscious sabotage opportunities, as well as work with our partners to understand poverty and racism through working groups.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, my face is 40 families. And then New Life, Nueva Vida is 30.
Okay. All right, so the math on this one, I got a spreadsheet now. It'll go a little faster. So the 15 is $9,116. The 14 is $8,508. All of those 14s.
Did you say 8580?
8508.
Oh, 8508.
The 13s are 7901. The 12s are 7293. And the 11 is, or all the 11s are 6609.
I'm not comfortable with this one.
What are you thinking, Brenda?
I don't like those numbers. I just feel that it needs to, we need to either shave somebody off so that we can give more. I'm just, for example, union. I'd rather it be 95 or 10 as opposed, or, you know, if we're going to give to New Life, I'd rather it be something because of the impact of what it's doing. I just am not real comfortable with this one.
Well, these numbers don't add up to all the money anyway, do they?
They add up to 110.
But yeah, and it's 100. How much in this category?
110.
110. I mean,
Okay.
it seems so low.
Yeah.
It is a lot. Well, and like you said, the best way, if we want to increase the impact to individual organizations, we'll have to take organizations off the list.
Exactly.
I mean, all of these are generally in the same range.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like United Health Centers, for example. I mean, let's face it, they probably get money from somewhere else. So is that somebody, and I'm just picking them as the, you know, we take them off the list so that we increase the opportunity to reach out to somebody else.
Well, you know, to some extent, I understand both arguments, but I think the formula is a pretty good formula. At the end of the day, you're just going to have a bunch of people that aren't getting anywhere near what they asked for if we do it this way. But I mean,
one of the things we were talking about earlier too, Brian, is interestingly, so this is a great example of this category. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these, however many there are that are on this list above the line, asked for the full amount of the category. You know, so like in my opinion, that is a recipe for potentially being disappointed in what you are awarded if you are awarded anything.
Yeah, and we aren't going to give them the full amount, but to give them $6,000,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel good to me.
I'm with you, Brenda. I think maybe this is like the way to start, and then we look at them and say, how many people are going to be, you know, what does their budget look like? Because some of these too have got huge budgets. Like, you know, I'm not going to pick on anybody, but maybe this is like how we've narrowed it, and then we say, does this make sense? And what do we think based on what they've asked for and what their budget is? Does this still make sense, or do we want to adjust within it rather than, because it is kind of arbitrary.
Yeah, and the amount of time that I've spent going through all of this, it's disappointing. It just seems like, okay, here we are.
Yes.
Well, and I think
it disappoints me because I went through every one of these, and some have a far more compelling case
Yes.
than the others.
Yep.
well, and I think
I want to be clear. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Melissa.
I just want to highlight the ones that also requested under other
Yes.
grants, because maybe they can be funded if we take them out of here and we fund them somewhere else, you know, because the mission is better suited under another category, then that's another way to kind of get them out of here. So like Neighbors for Better Neighborhoods requested, the Dwelling requested, Hope to Thrive requested, Sherman, like there's already like 4 or 5 that have already requested elsewhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, the point of this was a baseline, folks, and I think everything that everybody is saying makes a whole lot of sense in this particular category. So let's just start making those individual pullouts, you know, and create a bigger pool of money for some of the remainders.
Yep, and I've got it in a spreadsheet now, so it's really easy to change those amounts. That's not a problem.
Why don't we go through all the categories and do it this way, and then look at how many organizations are in more than one category, and we can start to look at those and say, okay, I mean, we have to decide, are we only going to do one grant per organization? And then if so, which one is better? And then that would cut some out, and at least we'd be a little bit minnowed down.
Let's do that.
Okay, let's keep rolling.
Well, why don't we highlight now in this category the ones that we know pop up elsewhere? Just put a
Okay,
highlight
so
on them.
yeah, Neighbors for Better Neighborhoods, The Dwelling, Hope to Thrive, Sherman Academy, and did New Life, Nueva Vida?
Yes.
I can't. Okay, New Life.
Yeah.
It doesn't like the green rose for some reason.
Not sure why it's not highlighted. Okay, there it goes.
Yeah, I think it's not letting you highlight the ones that are green, the rows that are green.
Yeah, that is, it's.
Maybe just make the text red.
Or bold.
Yeah, something.
How about like that?
Nope.
I'm sorry, what were the other ones?
It's not doing.
I would just bold it. Yeah.
These are 4?
I think it was
Hope to Thrive.
Sherman instead of More Than Conquerors.
Hope to Thrive.
Yeah, but I can't read the one that's in the green with the yellow line, yellow writing.
Yeah.
What do you mean in the green?
There we go.
The green rose.
And then Sherman Academy.
So was More Than Conquerors, Melissa, was that one of the
No.
ones?
No.
Okay, yeah, so the More Than Conquerors was not, at least.
Yeah, we need to come up a line to Hope to Thrive.
And was Southside Rides, did they ask twice?
Yes, they're in multiple categories.
Yeah,
Yes.
Southside Rides.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether they're above the line in the other categories, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, Patrice, I think that More Than Conquerors, I don't think that was in another category that I can remember.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Okay.
That was, the rest of them look right. Okay. All right. So if we go, I think this was the last of the categories here. So maybe we went back up to the top. We could just use the same methodology as Gail mentioned, and we can run through those others. All right. So let's see. I'm not sure, the greater than 15%, that's just saying they wouldn't accept anything. If it was less than 15% of what they asked, they would not.
Try it again.
Yeah, they said no more than a 15% reduction.
You're telling me how much money to give you.
Yes, you're exactly right.
Well, you know, but I mean, it could be altruistic as well. They're like, hey, go give it to someone else, because if I'm only going to get $9,000, it's really not going to help my cause. Go put it somewhere else where it can be used. I mean, I'd rather look at it that way. But at the same time, again, I don't know that, if look how many things are above 11 here. I mean, we're going to end up with this. We're going to end up with the same less than $10,000 number.
Well, but we'll go back. That's what we said. We'll go back and start. We have to.
Mm-hmm.
So the Triad Restorative Justice, that funding that they wanted is to hire a licensed clinical social worker that would work with 150 youth. So that's why they probably put the limit on how much, because they're using it to pay somebody a salary.
For a year.
Right.
Right.
And the other thing we have to keep in mind, to the point that you made, Brian, is that we've got twice as much money in this category.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, I understand that. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so in this category, just to let you know, the numbers are going to be somewhere between $9,000 and $10,000 per grant if we were to go just based off of this. So the numbers are higher in this by a little bit.
Let's put the numbers in then.
Yeah. All right. So the 13s are $10,359. The 12s are 9,562. And the 11s are 8,765. That's going to be slightly off, but it's pretty close at the bottom. We can correct that at the end.
We go to the next category.
Can we highlight the ones that are repeated?
Yep.
Hope to Thrive.
Neighbors for Better Neighborhoods.
Union Baptist Church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Triad Restorative Justice.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And South Side Rides.
Boston Thurman.
Yeah, Boston Thurman.
Now, one thing I want us to keep in mind, I'm pretty sure, if memory serves me correctly, the program that Union Baptist Church applied for support under this category is different from what they apply for support under the other category. This is the corner-to-corner program that's been very successful in reaching ex-offenders.
It is. We're going to come back to it.
I just want to point that out for the benefit of the committee, that's all.
Yeah.
And I think Neighborhoods Hands also has requested, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they also are doubles.
The next one's got a lot less.
Hallelujah.
Oh, Lord.
Thank you.
Lot less numbers and lot less dollars.
Let me run this through here.
Hope to Thrive.
Okay, so in this one, the 14s are something is off. Yeah, the 14s are 2,165.
Ugh,
Yeah, the problem is there's less money too.
yeah.
Let me make sure that equals something. Hold
No,
on,
that's all right.
something's off here. Hold on.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I'm off by a factor of 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was on 21.
the 14s are 2,164.9. The 13s are 2,0103. The 12s are 18,557. And the 11s are 17,010.
Wow.
Smaller group.
And then Hope to Thrive is a repeat in that one as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, it's interesting to see how this all shakes out because it's really boiling down to a function of how many fall above the line and what is the total in that category. So I think we've hit all of the categories now, haven't we?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess now let's focus on the ones that are in multiple categories that fall above the line. And let's determine whether, as the Reverend said, are they for different programs or is it for the same program in different categories?
I have a note that Southside Rides, it's the same request in different category.
They just moved it forward.
Yeah, so that's a definite same request.
Yeah, so that one will likely come off the list there, or at least in one of these categories. Boston Thurman, this is a different request for them.
Correct.
What about Hope to Thrive? I can't remember whether theirs was different or the same.
Let's see.
What's their ask, Patrice?
Theirs are different.
Yeah. Now, where I do think is the same, if you go down between long-term anti-poverty, that category, at least their request is the same amount, 65.5. And
So now,
in the heritage, it's also 65. Well, 65,350. So maybe that's two different things, or 66.
so
Okay,
in long,
this category, what was their ask? I
In
mean,
the long-
what are they using the funds for?
long-term, I have, it's going to be mental health care, meals, housing, and debt counseling. And it will specifically help 1 to 3 families.
Okay, this is great. We're in the social, let's say.
That's for long-term.
Okay, 20 for skill facilitation is part-time staff materials, 10 for psychoeducation of racism, trauma, poverty with mental health professionals, and 3 to offer incentives to attend. That's in the social justice category.
You said that, Melissa, you said that the intent was to help 1 to 3 families
Yes.
for the long-term
Yes.
category.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not a big reach.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
And then the one where they do the grants for social justice and anti-poverty, that was anti-racism training for 15 to 20 people. And in that request, it was 43,000. So it sounds like they have 3 different types of programs that they're kind of aiming to get funded.
If you rank the programs, how would we do that?
I would say that, I mean, me personally, in looking at these, it sounds like the original for 40,000 under the mentorship, they've already got, it sounds like that program is already somewhat established with the 4 restaurants. That's the one that Patrice read.
Mhm.
And
yeah, that has a good reach.
right. And I think that
great outcomes.
yes, and I think so that's mentorship, but I think that that also could potentially have some really long-term, you know, getting
Right.
getting people employed and a skill set. There's some long-term benefit to that.
Yes.
Exactly.
So I think that that one is probably, there's, in my opinion, there's the strongest request, and it's also the least amount of 40,000 requested.
The challenge with that, and this may be a point of clarification, Ben and Patrice, if we made a determination that somebody possibly applied for something in the wrong category and we wanted to move the category, is that a possibility?
I mean, I would say that that's at the committee's discretion, Mark.
Okay, well, so that's helpful. So one thing we could do, if we said, look, we really think that this is your most compelling program, but you're in the category that's going to give you the least amount of funding. You know, maybe we move that to the long-term category, which I think will give them, it should give them more funding if we were to do that, especially, basically it would take the place of their other one. We would just take, instead of that program that Patrice has highlighted there, it would be the other program. And it would increase their funding by almost 3-fold.
I think that sounds good because what they had in that one was it's just anti-racism training and it would only touch 15 to 20 people.
But are the 15 to 20 people the ones that are being trained to deliver?
Is there going to be some accountability for the people who applied in multiple categories that the money received goes to the category we applied it to? Or is it just going to be money that then they really have to control within their own organization?
I think that contract that they ultimately will sign with the city for the money will require it to be part of the program that was on that application.
Okay.
That's correct. That's correct. And I would just say too, going back to Mark's earlier question, as long as you feel like the case can be made that moving Hope to Thrive's mentorship request into the long-term strategy still makes sense in that category, then I mean, I think again, I think is something you all could consider.
And they scored an 11 in both categories.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But they get more money if
Correct.
If you use this formula.
Yeah.
They get more money in this category.
I think we move. I think that's what we do.
Yeah, which is our goal.
Yeah.
I mean, all we're doing is making the recommendation because ultimately the council makes the final decision. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we'll make that move. However we want to do that, we probably ought to indicate that somehow in red, and if that ends up being the recommendation that to council that we need to let them know we moved that from category to category because we felt it was a better fit in another category.
They may say, no, you can't, but nonetheless.
Right.
The point of clarity, what's the council that makes the final decision on this?
Yes.
Yes.
What council are we talking about?
City.
City council will make the
So
final.
the city council is going to essentially make a final determination based on our recommendations.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is different from the COVID-19 response fund grants where they delegated that authority to you all. This time, you all make a recommendation and they'll make the final approval.
Can we, and this is my thing.
Go for it, Brenda. Go for it.
I mean, can we say 17, 17, 17? Can we round these up to where I just don't like
What I was thinking, Brenda, on that is once we get to where we're basically comfortable with whatever the recommendation is, we can go in and we can round these off and make sure they equal out to be the right number.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to give somebody 18,557.
Yeah, that is.
It's going to make him think a lot more work got done, I promise.
Yeah.
That's true.
I think in our recommendations, we should tell the city council members that they need to put in as many hours as we've all put in reviewing all of this stuff before they make one change in anything.
Well,
they'll delegate it if they do that.
To that point, Brother Ben, because that does strike me that we're going through, and I know several folks here have said they've gone through every single application and made notes, and of course you all staff have. We're spending this meeting time. I'm a little bothered by the notion that the city council could make substantive changes here, because of course there's a whole set of political considerations that go on at the city council level. That are not necessarily, should not be prevailing over this committee. I guess the only thing I would ask is that if there are substantive changes that are made to our recommendations, that information be reported back to us before this kind of goes out publicly. Because the thing that I don't want to have happen, given that this is a publicly appointed committee, is that we get held responsible for things that may or may not pass muster. And I'll just use that language to be diplomatic, because of political decisions that were made at the council level. If they are the ones who have the final authority to approve or disapprove our recommendations, then the buck stops with them, and that needs to be real clear. you upset with anybody, you know, as an organization or whatever, you need to go talk to the council. Don't talk to us if there are substantive changes.
But will the records not reflect?
And we were only an advisory role.
Yeah, will the record not, because this has to be documented when it goes before the council as a recommendation coming from this body. And so that is documented and in writing, and people will be able to see it, I assume, if they're watching on TV. So we can't be held responsible unless somebody is not informed, and then we can inform them as to what the procedure is. Because, you know, they aren't going to come back to us and ask us anything else.
No.
We could be going round and round on that with the council. So,
well, and again, we're just an advisory role here. They shouldn't come back and ask us anything. We're just doing the legwork after the legwork.
Yeah.
Well, so listen, guys, I just want to be clear here. First of all, I'm not sure that Joe Q Public always recognizes all the distinctions between advisory committees, you know, versus the ones that actually make decisions.
Absolutely, Paul.
You know, the city council, just like every other elected body in this county and beyond, is a hotbed of politics and political considerations that people make. And so I do think it's going to be very important that it's clear, as folks have said, you know, what our role is and specifically what our authority was here.
Yeah.
And what the city council's role is and what their authority is. And again, just so we know, then if they come back and do some substantive change, even just to one or two or three organizations that we funded this way and they go the other way, I just want us to know before this goes out public in terms of what the final determination.
Well, I'm not, you know, again, your point's well taken,
but I just want to make that
matter whether I know or not.
Because again, this is the group that's putting in the work.
Yeah.
You know, and
no, it doesn't matter.
That's all.
So, let me just comment on that very quickly. So first off, yes, when we prepare the action item, excuse me, to go to council, I mean, it'll
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Oh, can you hear me now?
You're frozen or something.
I can hear you.
Oh,
Yeah, I can hear him. Brandon, can you hear us?
I think she's frozen.
Oh, now I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
okay. So what I was going to say is, so Patrice and I, we will be drafting an action item that'll go to council. It'll be a narrative to kind of explaining the process, the fact that, you know, the council did delegate this responsibility to you all as far as reviewing the applications and developing the recommendations. And then it'll be noted in the resolution that they would actually act on. I would say to you, so we will be happy to send that to you before it goes to committee, because most likely I think this will probably go to the finance committee before it goes to the full city council. Having said that, though, I mean, if there are discussions about, you know, changing, you know, the committee's recommendations, that's going to happen in a public meeting, most likely. I mean, we may get a council member or two who will approach, you know, management about, you know, how they want to adjust, you know, this or that grant amount or include this agency or not. But I don't think that's something that staff is going to reflect in what goes forward to committee. I think that would have to occur in an open meeting, like the finance committee, or even in, you know, a full council meeting. So, Reverend Ford, to your point, I'm not sure that we can communicate back to you all substantive changes, because those changes may actually get discussed in a public meeting, you know, in the moment. But we'll definitely send you all the draft of the action item that staff is going to send forward, so you can see how we're presenting the information and how we're going to make it clear that this is a recommendation from the committee, you know, so that it's clear, you know, as far as accountability goes in terms of the ultimate allocation decision.
Okay.
Well, one thing that probably could be done, Ben, is I know you can't document, you know, everything that happens in the meeting, but at the end of the meeting, ultimately there will be the final list, right? And
Yes.
so you could probably just send the final list out. This is the approved list from City Council, and we'll at least have that to compare to the recommendation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we like I said, we'll let you see. I mean, we'll share the item with you before, it gets put on the agenda. So that if there's any, language you want us to revise, I mean, we can certainly look to do that. And then, yes, absolutely. I mean, when the council makes the decision, we'll keep you all in the loop on that. Absolutely.
And Ben, just to say one more thing, and I don't want to belabor the time because I know we have other things to do here today, but in situations like this, where you've got, dozens, I think when it's all said and done, of decisions that are being made kind of in a list of allocations, I really think it's best practice, if all the parties involved are kind of respecting the process, to just take the whole slate and vote it up or vote it down. And to try to really avoid any sort of line itemization, because again, that raises questions as to why you're doing that. And I don't know how much more can be added to the recommendations that come from this committee other than our, recommended amounts to each organization. And what I'm really speaking to is the notion of a narrative that kind of appeals to the city council to give that consideration. That there was a thought process that went into all of these recommendations. And if I'm speaking for myself, y'all can shut me down, but we would really hate to see line item changes or vetoes, in a kind of arbitrary process by a finance committee or a city council open meeting that has not given full consideration to the thought process that went into this. So.
Did we not have when we did the COVID grants, was this not the same procedure?
No.
What was different?
They couldn't change what we said.
Okay, so that's the only difference.
Yeah.
It's a substantial one in my mind.
Yeah.
Hey,
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, they could have if they wanted to.
Exactly.
I mean,
Oh, really?
but they had delegated to you all that authority because at the time, expediency was the priority. Get the applications reviewed and get the grants into the hands of the agencies because of the purpose of those grants.
Can we just move on with this process? I mean, it's great discussion, but listen, there's nothing we can do once we make this recommendation. So can we just move on in the interest of time?
No, I agree. I agree with you, Brenda. But let me just ask one more question. The process that we're doing right now, what I see on the screen, I don't see any issue with that from a 20,000 foot view. When you roll down and you're giving people $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 and $8,000, I'm wondering if the finance committee or council might go, we just don't want to give them that little money. We need to narrow it down to fewer people with more money.
And that's what we're going to do. So move on.
Yeah. So let's go up to the top one if you don't mind, and let's just look at this one more time. Or in there one above this one, Patrice? The category above this. This is the one that has the most number of folks above 11 and above. And so back to this concept of those that have applied in multiple categories, are we confident that those folks are those folks asking for different things in the different categories? Yeah, I believe we are, but just to be sure.
Well, we said Southside Rides had the same request in another category.
Right, in each one of their categories.
And so that Southside Rides, my recommendation would be to remove the request from this category just because of the number of folks that are
Agreed.
contention.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. And then let's go to the next category and sort of make sure the same thing.
Okay, let's not lose track now. Okay, they were 8765.
Right.
That'll be reallocated.
Right.
Point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And this one, I don't, other than Hope to Thrive, which was a different program, obviously we've talked about that. Everything else, this is a one-time ask, I believe, in this category.
I think so. I think so.
Okay, let's roll down to the next category, please. Okay.
Oh, Hope to Thrive is down here again. Sherman Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't we already decide on Hope to Thrive to take that one and move it to a different category?
I think this is the one that we moved.
We moved the
We moved the
mentorship.
mentorship.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So shouldn't we strike this one?
Well, it's a different program. And so this is one where I wanted to make sure that we were confident everything was a different request.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm pretty sure it is on this one.
Okay.
What's the money for?
Okay, 66,350 will form an intergenerational heritage preservation and education program. As second and third generation residents of this neighborhood, many of us taking over the homes of former family members feel a unique and pressing responsibility to reclaim and preserve the history, heritage, and homes of East Winston, as many of these stories are dying off with the elders and people are moving out and new rental low-income residents are moving in.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So the coordinator, so I think it's for a coordinator. The coordinator of this program paid approximately $25,000, will manage the stipends and so forth. The stipends will run about $21,000 for the year.
Which organization is this?
Hope to
This is Hope
Thrive.
to Thrive.
Hope to Thrive.
Under
Okay.
heritage preservation. So they apply,
Gotcha.
looks like 3 or 4 times.
Gotcha. Okay.
Brenda, was that sound because of the staffing?
Yeah, I just, I see what they're doing, but what are the outcomes?
Mm-hmm. It's very hard to measure that one.
It's extremely hard to measure.
It's also something that desperately needs to be done, though. And so part of the challenge here, I think, is that because this is about long-term preservation of kind of community memory, I can tell you, being involved in a lot of these efforts, with other groups, not necessarily Hope to Thrive around the city, it is connected to, for lack of a better term, how we shape the consciousness around the types of issues that will become a consideration when it comes to equitable development, when it comes to concerns about gentrification, all of that. It's hard to tangibilize in a situation like this. But I saw, especially under this category, heritage preservation education, several groups that are coming in the same spirit. And I think it's going to be very important that we give some, decent funding to at least a couple of these efforts when we think about Happy Hill Neighborhood Association and that importance historically of that community, as well as potentially Hope to Thrive, even though we're not going to be able to account for it in the same way that we can where there's a reading program, that teaches 100 kids how to read. So
This is a category that would be awesome if some of these folks would come together.
I agree.
I mean, it would be awesome to band together and seek funding from some of the other available sources in our community.
So I think my take on this particular ask is there's probably a healthy decision that is going to be made on the part of Hope to Thrive. Because whatever we give them, it's not going to be the complete amount they've asked for. And they're going to have to make a decision on the importance of the coordinator versus the importance of the folks that are doing the work. And I know where I hope they wind up with that, but I think that it's going to force some conversations on their end that are probably healthy conversations for them to have. Okay, let's go to the next category, Patrice, just to make sure again.
What about Sherman Academy? It's in 2 places. Is it the same Was it the same program?
I don't think so. I think it was a little bit different. I'm looking for my notes. It's a lot of pages of notes.
I can't find my other Sherman Academy, so I'm.
Help provide culturally motivated reading and math materials, learning. What is that? Oh, yeah.
So I looked up their website, and I think it's just like a small place off of North Point Boulevard, if I'm remembering correctly, that deals with the community. One of them, I think, was asking for more resources, like more books. Let me see if I can find that. One was more culturally motivated reading and math materials. That was the one that's under heritage and preservation. And that would touch 60 to 100 people for 50,000.
I never heard of them. Is there anybody else?
I haven't either.
No.
And then the other one was for 50,000, and that was for a parent mentor advocacy program where there would be, I think they're currently doing it, but it's like training sessions. It would pay for more training sessions, space, additional space and supplies for 60 to 100 people. And I think that that's taking parents from within the community and if I remember correctly, teaching them how to advocate for their children within the school system and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
That's a very viable option.
Yes.
That to me is very, very viable.
And that, go ahead. Sorry, Brenda.
It's needed.
Mm-hmm. And that one would touch 60 to 100 people. And that was in the, I think the mentorship and education. Yeah, neighborhood and mentorship.
So that would be my top category for them.
Agreed.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
So we can take them off of the heritage.
But hold on again, because this may be one you want to move. I mean, in this one, they're looking at 15,000. What are they looking at in the other one?
Well, we have to make a case to move it. So we'd have to say that the mentorship program, I don't know that you could put that in the heritage. And
no, I agree. I agree.
I agree. Take them off and look at giving them as much money as we can in the other category.
Yeah.
Yeah, they aren't going to get 6,000.
No.
Right. So I think, and this is the last one here. I think we've talked about all of these here. I think these are all separate requests. This is where we put the Southside rides was here.
Well, neighbors for better neighborhoods. Did we talk about that? I mean, we know a lot about them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think their request was like they had two separate requests. If I remember correctly, it wasn't the same request.
Yeah, I think you're right. So so I think we've ensured this to the best of our knowledge, at least, that we don't have people that are getting multiple grants for the same thing in different categories.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of questions on this one, because I think this last category is the one that is driving a lot of the sort of consternation of just lower dollar amounts. A couple of thoughts here. One, do we make the cutoff score higher? That would be one way to do it. Yeah, if you took it up to where Patrice has just drawn that, for instance, take the 11s off the page. That would be one thing to do. The other, there are a couple of organizations on here that have got, big budgets. There's two that have $4.5 million budgets in this category.
Yes.
And this is a little bit of a double-edged sword, because I don't know that you could do for one and not do it in another category necessarily. But you've got Carter Woodson School, and then you've got United Health Centers. So United Health Centers, if I remember right, is funded through Baptist and Novant primarily. So they have a funding source here. I'm not to say that what they're asking for is not needed, but they do have a significant funding source. And don't know where the school's funding comes from, but that's a big budget as well. Do we consider removing one or both of those organizations because they could potentially get funding in other places?
So the United Health Centers is requesting for a college ambassador program for 40 students a year, just to take that into consideration. And then the Carter Woodson School, it's a mentorship program for grades 6 through 12, and including, like, I guess, starting a social justice curriculum that would touch 225 students.
I'm sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
No, just throwing that out there as, like, knowing what the money would be going toward, and if we feel like it could be funded, and how does that fit under what we're trying to accomplish under the mentorship and neighborhood capacity building umbrella.
The thing I want us to be careful about, I'm thinking specifically of Carter G. Woodson. I don't know enough about the kind of funding availabilities to United Health Centers, but part of the consideration may be, if we were to ask them this, that the specific programs they're looking for support for financially, they would not be able to get support for that type of a program, you know, from their usual funding base. I mean, for Carter G. Woodson, you're talking about a combination of county-based and state-based funds, since it's a public charter school. You know, I mean, that's going to be the basis of their funding. The question is, would they be able to get funding for a program like this from one of those two areas? I don't know. I'm not so sure, you know, so it's just something to think about. It may be that we justify in our minds giving an organization like that the smaller dollars versus deferring to the smaller organizations for larger dollars because of this consideration. I'm not so sure if we should just cut them out, though, because they have big budgets, because, you know, they're teaching students. Right.
I would look at taking United Health Centers out, because the probability of them getting that money is far greater than it is for Carter G. Woodson. And I would suggest that Carter G. Woodson get $10,000. That's my
I would do.
Often.
And United Health Centers, they're only going to affect 40 people. I mean, 40 is a lot, but Carter G's saying 225.
They have the ability to get money more so than G. So that's what I would.
Guys, I understand that, but the original premise of doing this numerically is going to go out the window if these guys get $10,000.
We just did the numerically to kind of say how much money could we do. Now we're into the who really would benefit most from the money. I mean, I think that was our, like, here's how we cut the list and get some sense of where we are. Yeah. Now we have to say, what's a reasonable amount for some of these programs? Yeah. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, that's where we are. We're moving on.
Were there any other organizations in this category that anyone felt we should remove that's above the existing line of 10?
The Sherman Academy is in here again, so we need to highlight them or bold Sherman Academy again.
And where did we leave them in the category above, or did we tell them did we
removed them from the first category?
So this is the one that we believe is a better funded program.
Yes.
This is the Parent Mentor Advocacy Program.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes, we removed them here.
Okay, so if there are no other, just sort of trying to tie a bow on this category, so if there are no other removals,
what is the Dream Team Foundation? What is their, what did they want to do with this money?
It's also mentorship and training. And I didn't take a lot of notes on this one, which tells me it may not have been very clear, or 20 participants per session. I don't know.
When I look at that, and then the two below it, the My Face and the New Life Nueva Vida, all of those have relatively modest budgets, and they're asking for multiple times their budget for this program. So I wanted to look at that dream team particularly because they're a $40,000 organization and yet they're asking for 110.
Right.
That one's really stuck out to me. And then my face too, an $8,000 budget and they're asking for 49.6. That seems like a lot of money for a very, the big, huge amount of increase of what they're typically doing. And one is handling 20 people, I think, and the other was 40 families. So I thought we ought to just make sure on those two.
Yeah, the My Face is a mentorship for unemployed and underemployed families, specifically in the Boston-Thurmond area. And that's the one that they said they would be able to work with 40 families.
How long has that one been in existence? Can you recall?
I don't know that I looked up My Face. I might have.
I think there was, I can't remember my notes on that, but.
Not all of them actually said how long they'd been around,
Right.
but just maybe one of them.
Okay.
That seems like a good educational space to be in, though.
But they're proposing to identify, assist, and mentor unemployed and underemployed families. I can recall from my notes that I wasn't real sure about this one. In terms of, again, my barometer is the impact, the overall impact. And if you look at where they're ranking in terms of the number of people served, then that would be one that I would, really 20, 40, 30 can come off. Southside Rides, is that the one that they were teaching skills?
Yes.
I recall that one.
They're an auto body program.
Yeah. I've heard a lot about them.
Yeah.
But again, there's another one. I mean, what is the overall impact? Because that's how we shrink this and give more money.
Yes.
And that to me is what I thought we're supposed to do.
And Southside is in multiple places. And I think, again, because Southside is providing an educational service, that there are long-term benefits to them continuing to do that work.
Yeah, they're good. I do know a lot about what they do, and they have really made a tremendous impact to the community.
So is there somewhere we can remove them from one and give in another category where they might be able
but I think we just look to give them more in this because what they're doing is mentoring.
Yeah.
And we've already removed them. We removed them from the first category.
Okay.
Right, because they said no partial funding.
No,
they didn't say that.
Oh, no. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you all wanted to remove them here because they were down.
Yeah, because this to me is the right place for them because building capacity within really across not just Southside, but across the total community. So they definitely need to get more money, and we just need to start shrinking more in this category.
So Mark, do you want to just rank everything above this line, 12 and above, and see?
Well, I think some of the ones that are below that line are the ones that everyone is having a challenge with the amount. I was thinking right now we have 13 organizations that are still in contention for the $110,000 in this category. If we wanted to give everybody $10,000, we'd have to cut 2 of them off the list.
Well, if we take out, let me say it differently. If we add to the give list, Sherman Academy, and we add to the give list, I don't know. I know about the Work It Great Commission community as well. And they were ones that we favored during some of the earlier grant time, but they do a lot.
They work with Neighbors for Better Neighborhoods, and they also specifically mentioned working with Mineral Springs Elementary. And so I felt like, that's definitely, that was a good organization.
If we stop it at that, let's just take a first pass. We're adding in Sherman Academy. And what does that do to the numbers? Well,
It's gonna take everything up like probably, let's see, we took off.
so we had Carnegie Woodson, Sherman Academy that would move up.
It would
About
take everybody up
3,000 more.
$1,000 roughly.
Only 1,000?
No,
Yes,
no,
ma'am.
want to be 3?
Because I'm saying if we add Carter and Sherman and Greater Commission, and that be the ones.
They're
Oh,
the only
just
11.
those three?
Yeah. Just
So we would take off, just
added
make sure I understand what you're saying, Brenda, we would take off the Dream Team, My Face, New Life,
yeah.
and More Than Conquerors.
Everything else below that would be taken off.
Okay, so now you're talking about, let's see, that's 4 times 6 is 25 to 14. You're gonna spread
Because we have to start somewhere.
40,000 over the remainder roughly, right?
Yeah.
24, 25.
Plus the 2 that we already took off. Let me just run it. No, that might be the easiest.
Run it. Yeah, run it. Because I mean, my notes are so confusing. Now I can't figure out what.
And I don't do math.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering
Me either.
how many groups we have here, because if you give $10,000 to every group, you can do that for 11 groups. Do we have more than 11?
Well, we're gonna see what happens because it may end up that
I think we have 12.
let's do the first pass.
All right.
It's 15.
All right, let me make sure that I've got this correct.
So
I'm gonna read the list to you just to be sure that I haven't missed anything. All right, so I've got Union Baptist, Neighbors for Better Neighborhoods, Youth Life Skills, Ministers Conference, Not United Health Centers, The Dwelling, Not Southside Rides.
Ooh.
Or am I supposed to have that here?
oh, we left outside.
We left that one.
Southside should be on here.
Yeah, it should be there. It's right.
Okay, and then down in the 11s, I've got just Great Commission, Sherman, and Carter. Is that right?
Yeah.
Give me one
Did you
second.
all remove?
What about More Than Conquerors?
I thought we had said we were going to remove them. No?
Who?
More Than
Yeah, we were
Conquerors.
only going to keep Great Commission, Sherman, and Carter. So we didn't remove them, but they didn't make it in the top 3.
You removed.
So essentially, they are removed.
Okay, hold on, give me 1 second.
Let's see what happens. And then we can start knocking off.
Well, it's down to 10.
All right, so in this one,
Take from somebody else.
yeah, so in this one, Patrice, the 15 is worth 14,474. The 14 is worth 13,509. The 13 is worth 12,544.
Well, we don't have a 13, do we?
No,
Yeah.
Okay, the 12 is
No,
worth,
we don't. That's right.
no,
Yeah.
United's off. Yeah, you take United out.
So we don't have a 13.
all right, so the 12 is worth 11,579. And the 11s are worth 10,614.
So what did you do to the 13? 'Cause
I just, the way that spreadsheet's set up, it calculates all of them. So that should get you close. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
That's, yeah, that looks a lot better and all we need to do is round it up. So,
Okay, just one, before we go there, just one question. Isn't this the only place where New Life, Nueva Vida is? Didn't we take them off the other one? Because I'm concerned about the
we take
Latino
them off every
community.
place
I just want to be sure that they're somewhere else yet.
because we moved them. No, we moved Hope to Drive. Who did we move?
They didn't make the cut in the first category or the second category.
There it is. Okay, we moved Hope to Drive.
Can we just look at that one, Patrice, the New Life one, what it was for? Because I feel like we need to be cognizant of the Latino community,
I agree, and we can make adjustments there.
but I can't
Sure.
remember now.
If you did
Okay,
that.
so they're an anger management mentorship type program through boxing to
Oh.
allow, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't that great of a request.
No. And it was
only
30 people.
Yeah, 30 individuals.
Yeah, 30 individuals. The money will be used for a boxing gym rental for 6 months.
We need to look at the other category for them to see.
Yeah.
So remind me, Ms. Tony, who was it, Nueva Vida? One of these applications and one of these categories spoke to their program as a means of trying to address community violence issues. And
Yes.
was that New Life's, or was that somebody else?
Now, Union did, I think. Did they not in one of theirs?
Well, I think Union's corner to corner.
Yeah, that's the corner to corner.
Well, I was thinking of another one besides that, though.
Yeah, there was another one, and I do think it was, let's see. Was someone that specifically addressed violence.
Because, you know, we need to support those types of efforts as long as they've got a reasonable initiative, you know, that they're going to use to do it.
Now,
Yeah, if you look at the description under the grants, there's two parts to Nueva Vidas. The first one is created for gangs to come to peace.
Okay. Okay, there you go. Gangs come peace, right. So under which category did they submit this particular program in terms of gangs coming to peace?
So that's under grants for social justice.
All right.
Yep.
So I think as long as we make sure we do something for them there under that category, I'm okay with moving on from them in the other category that I think we're in right now.
What did they score in the other category, guys?
They scored really low.
Yeah.
Well, I just want us to re-examine that before we make a decision, because we, you know.
I think they may have scored low because what I have notes for is that it was going to be for 30 individuals for only 3 months. So I think that felt like a little bit of a lot of money for a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's also one of the ones that, and it could be that they wrote it the same way in all of them, but they have no partial funding associated with that, which I think that's probably, I think we could probably take that note off.
I think they will take it. I think he just, yeah.
Yeah, if we can look specifically at that application again in greater detail, because again, you know, we're dealing with different organizations that have different level of capacity to even deal with things like grant applications and to know how to, you know, kind of provide a persuasive narrative that's going to encourage a funder to send dollars their way, but it doesn't mean they're not doing important work.
Why don't we just, Patrice, if you would, on the other sheet, if you would make that one bold, we'll come back to, we'll just, when we hit that category, we'll make sure that we'll talk about it and figure out what we do with them. So let's see if we can tie a bow on the bottom category.
Yeah, let's.
Because I think that was the one that had the most concern over it. And so if we did this, if we now rounded these off to the nearest 100, you think, Brenda?
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Is there a formula I can use?
I don't know that there probably is. I just don't know what it is. So probably just make that one 14.4.
No, that's not rounding.
Do you want to go all the way up to?
I was actually going to round that one down to 14.4. And then the next three would be 13.5.
Yeah. $11.5.
Or maybe even 11.6 on that one. What do you think, Brenda? Rounded.
Well, let's see what happens with the money if we do 11.6.
Do 10.6, 10.6, 10.6.
Yeah.
Wait, what was this one?
10,600.
Okay.
The next three, 2. And what is that total?
Fingers crossed, y'all. Ooh.
$100 off. I would add the $100 to the top one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We got one.
All right, one category wrapped up.
We're done.
Success.
Dave.
Patrice, good luck on writing all this in the narrative, Patrice, by the way.
It's recorded, so that's good.
That is great.
Okay.
Now, these numbers in this category are more, none of them are super low, I guess, let me put it that way.
No, they're not.
Are there any in this category that we want to talk about as we did in the last category, as if it's not serving, you know, a strong enough portion of the population? I only really see 2 of them on here that have smaller numbers. Maybe 3.
The hoops, I see. Well, 10 plus. What does that mean?
The
10
number
people?
served. Yeah.
I mean, like 10 people?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it was 10 families, if I'm not mistaken. That was my note.
10 family. It's 10 families.
Okay.
They're going to educate, support whole families. And
10
they would
students and families.
Tell you, the Hoops for Life is doing great work in the community, and they rely on this type of support to back their work. And they are connected in with a number of other organizations, grassroots organizations in the community that have a similar, you know, kind of concern. I don't recall whether or not they appeared under multiple categories.
They didn't.
They did.
Okay. So I think we ought to try to do something for them here. I know Brittany Ward well, and she's deeply committed to the community that they're
Well,
serving.
10 families is, you know, we don't know the number, but that's probably a good range.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say, like, Acción Hispana, theirs are for scholarships for Latino students. And so if we're looking at the Latino community, I think to be able to give students access to money to be able to go to college is a good thing.
And then just looking, the Triad Cultural Arts Heritage Center, 150,000. That's the only one in this category that's a 6-figure request.
No,
They're looking to fund the Heritage Center at the Urban League, which, I mean, I think their ask is small if that's what they're trying to do, right? If there's like their 150 isn't going to get them very far, but I like what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
If okay, they're going to fund through Urban League, but is the impact greater to shift some of that money to the Black Repertory Company or to somebody else? For example, should we look at maybe 15 for them? And
Well, also on this one, we haven't reallocated this yet. These numbers are going to go up a little bit based on taking the 3 off that we took off.
Exactly.
Let me give you those numbers, Patrice.
Yeah.
The 15s, or the 15 is worth 20,357. The 14s are worth 19,000 even.
Oh, that's good.
That
The
is good.
13s are worth 17,643. 12s are worth 16,286. And the 11s are worth 14,929.
And see, I think we should give the Acción Hispana at least rounded up to 18.
Yeah, that's the scholarships.
That's
Yes.
scholarships. And I think that, you know, they just need to be, I think that would be 18, at least 18.
Okay.
got to come from somewhere.
Yeah. So let's do that one to 18.
Yeah.
Let's take
Bring Smart Start to 20 even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
That's a
top
great
one there, 20,000, and then your 19
Yeah.
and 19 would stay.
And then,
Can I give a shout out to Silver Lining Youth Services? They asked for 50, And theirs is for a STARS program, which is intervention working with teens. And I liked that they mentioned that they do work with Winston-Salem State and Carver High School, and that it's going to touch 100 students. I just felt like that was it's involving a lot of community. And there's a lot of potential for great outcome there.
I'd give them
Maybe I would make that one 18 and
Yes.
one below it.
18.
And can
Those 18.
can we take the 12s and make them 16 and see how much more money that
We don't have to be 12s.
We've got 3 12s. I'm
Yeah,
saying.
3
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you meant 12,000.
No. Yeah.
And then I would make those two bottom ones, Patrice. I would make the two 11s at 15,000 even.
Exactly.
And let's.
I have a note that Happy Hill neighborhood is
No, not that one.
No, not that one.
That's a 0 for that one. Yeah. And then how are we sitting? I would make that 17,643 to 18,000 and see where that's.
You have a note that Happy Hill what?
There it is.
it's not a nonprofit, so I don't know how that affects legally.
It's a CDC. It should be. A CDC is a nonprofit.
I don't know. That's
Yeah,
the note
it
I
said that they were not.
So they're not a 501c3, which I think is specifically what the application asked.
Okay.
But the question is, do they have another either fiscal agent they work with, or do they have another status, and Ben, that would allow the city to give them money? I guess that's a question you're going to have to, address with them or answer.
I think they're a C6, which is it's not a charitable nonprofit, but it's an economic development nonprofit, like a lot of neighborhood associations are. So they may be okay.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to.
I think that looks good. We reached the, is 190 in this category?
It is. That's perfect. Yay.
All right. Let's go up to the next one and see where that one's sitting.
Woo.
Can we let Ben answer that question, though, please? We're getting ready to say something.
Oh, sorry, Ben.
No, that's fine. I was just going to say with the Happy Hill Neighborhood Association, and with our form of agreement, part of our due diligence, the city attorney's office does check the state secretary of state to make sure that the organization is registered to do business in Carolina. So going back to Reverend Ford's point, we may just have to work with them on figuring out how they have to organize themselves as a 501c3 and get registered, or find a fiscal partner. I'm not sure. I think that one we might have to just kind of work with them on that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So Ben, they have to be a C3?
For the city, and they have to be registered with the Secretary of State. They don't necessarily have to be a 501c3. So if you go back to the COVID-19 response fund grant process, you all awarded grants to a number of churches.
Right.
That they have to be nonprofits, but they also have to be registered with the Secretary of State. So I think in this case, we're just going to have to just kind of work with them on making sure they meet, the criteria for us.
Okay.
Good deal.
All right,
Okay.
on this one, we hadn't made any changes to this one in terms of what we allocated earlier or spread earlier. So what if we rounded these off and see where they sit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's give Hope to
21.6.
Thrive 20. Let's start with giving them 20. Hope to Thrive.
Hope to Thrive. Where is Hope to Thrive?
It's
First
Want to
one.
reduce it to 20?
53. Yeah. It's line.
Oh, no, that's Hope of Winston, right?
No,
Yes.
Hope to Thrive, I'm looking at is line 53.
Oh, I see. I see the ones bold there. I got you. You want to move them up to 20 is what you're thinking?
Yeah.
All right, let's
Let's go down the list. So
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
So I would make these 18.5 for all of those.
Okay.
Can we review Eliza's Helping Hands? It's my understanding that they were going to give money directly to people as part of that.
Patrice, put that one at 20, that first one.
Yeah.
Of those, and then leave the other. No, not that one. Not that one.
Hope to
sorry.
Thrive, 5320.
That one.
Oh,
Yeah.
20 here.
Yeah.
And then we can.
So we're $1,100 off there. Okay. So I'm sorry, Melissa.
I just was curious if we could review Eliza's Helping Hands application.
Yeah, I printed that one. out. It said our goal is to help 250 individuals, allowing 600 per person. These resources will be used to help with financial wealth building classes, court advocacy, legal fees depending on the circumstances, counseling, mental health services, preventive programs and services for children of color, how to start a business. All resources will go directly to the clients that we serve. Our operating expenses are already absorbed in those costs. So it is like cash or payment of, legal fees or court. I don't know what court advocacy is exactly, but.
I'm not a fan of direct cash payments to people. Now, if they're saying if you have, if you need court support or if you need, whatever those services are that you just read off, Gail, if they're saying bring us the receipt for that and we'll reimburse you, it's an odd model, but it's better than giving them $600.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's why I printed it because I had some questions about it. I don't know anything about the program.
Well,
I mean, it depends what kind of controls for accountability they have to the people that they're giving the money to. I mean, I think that's a big job to do that.
Well, I also want to be mindful, this is the mutual aid model that is gaining some momentum and that is becoming, you see more examples of it with a number of the grassroots organizations, because so much of, meeting the need gets lost in the thick layers of bureaucracy that have been set up in the nonprofit industrial complex. I am not, that familiar with Eliza's Helping Hands as a specific organization. But I do want to push back against the notion of, not supporting, organizations that use a mutual aid model.
How long does it say? I don't know how long they've been in
this. It says we have served since 2012 over 10,000 citizens. And it says that that a number of their clients have come back to volunteer and some continue to come to us as a safe haven. I was pretty impressed with what they were doing. It was the first time I'd ever heard of, this idea of, but it looks to me from what they said in here that they're more assisting some of our clients with legal costs and fees as needed, working with the legal community and local law enforcement to provide information about the legal system and their rights. So I don't necessarily, I printed it because I didn't know whether they were just handing people $600 or not, but that's not my impression of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would agree with that from what I'm reading of it as well. I think they are trying to make the point that we're not going to need to spend any of these dollars on administrative costs, but we're going to be able to send it directly to, client service, so to speak, because we've taken care of administrative costs elsewhere.
I think that's admirable. If that's what they're saying, I mean, the more of this money that can actually go towards flow downhill to the people that need it directly, whether it's cash or in services, rather than an administrative position. I kind of like that.
And I think, Patrice and Ben, that's something you can sort of check out in this process as to how the money actually is given, whether it's reimbursed or whether it's given out or whether there's a receipt. I mean, is that not something you can do?
After we do this?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's what I mean. As part of your due diligence, working with them, I would think that the city would want to do that.
Yes.
And then my only other question in this group of the ones we're looking at was Industries for the Blind with a $200 million budget.
They do great work, but they got a big budget.
We ran into this with the COVID, as I recall.
They do great work, but they only asked, I shouldn't say only, they asked for $40,000. And I thought to myself, do you mean in a $200 million budget, you can't find $40,000?
Well, in the interest of full disclosure, I sit on their board. And
good.
I will tell you, it is a phenomenal organization who, if you have kept up with some of what they have gone through, they have had some challenges with some contracts between the federal government wanting to do some things, the VA and so forth. So I wanted to make sure I had already said to Patrice, I'm on this board, should I weigh in? But I can assure you that they would not be asking. Now, that's all I can say.
Well, no, that's why I asked the question, because they have a phenomenal reputation. And it just seems strange to be asking for that small amount of money, given their resources.
I applaud them for not asking for the full amount of the category.
No, and they probably have it earmarked for a specific thing that goes directly to somebody who is visually impaired. I can assure you of that.
It was to relocate 16 people to Winston-Salem, or partially to relocate 40 people who will eventually become productive members of the Winston-Salem economy.
Right. They do bring people in who are blind from all over the country to employ them.
So if we were to give them the 20,000, that would get 8 people here versus 16.
Exactly.
I'm not objecting to it at all. I just, was looking for more information.
Well, you just gave me an opportunity to share.
Thank you.
And it was very good sharing.
So Patrice, on this one, it looks like we need to shave $1,100 off of this. Yeah, let's see.
You can bring this down to 18.
If you do it evenly, you take 200 off of everybody and somebody gets a 300 haircut.
Or like Flywheel, they were asking for money to pay for their fund formation expense.
Take it off them. They have money.
I'm sure they could find that money elsewhere.
Flywheel can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't disagree with that. I think I rated them pretty low because of that.
I did too, because they have means.
So 18,000?
I would take them to 0. In my personal opinion. Basically what they're asking for is they're asking for us to fund their ability to go raise money.
Well, 0.
0 then.
If that 0.
And since we're discussing them, the Dress for Success,
Hey, we better get done fast because people are falling on the knives here, man. Holy cow.
We're getting there.
Yeah, well, and we want to be fair. So like for me, for Dress for Success, I have that they were going to touch 150 people, but I've made a note that it wasn't really clear how the money was going to be used. I didn't get a clear sense.
I had that same note.
So I don't know that we want to give them $18,000 if we're not really sure, if they weren't really good at explaining how that money was going to be used.
Well,
They only asked for 10. They only asked for 10.
So give them what they
well, that's a good point. Okay.
Okay, done.
That is a good point.
It was easy.
All
well,
right.
and Hope to Thrive, we moved to this category because we thought that their other category was very compelling.
So let's give them a little bit more. Let's give them
Exactly.
25 or 30.
30.
Okay.
30.
Going one.
Maybe we start at 25.
Yeah.
Okay.
Holy cow.
Okay.
Brenda, do you hang
I
out
would
with my wife?
consider the rankings as well. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. So now they're more than the highest rank in the
That's true.
category.
Let's go back
Yeah.
to
But that's because we moved them from another category.
yeah.
Mhm. But they weren't number one in the other.
No, they were an 11. They were an 11 in the other category as well.
So let's give Hope of Winston-Salem 25.
Well, I was thinking if you now add $5,000 to everybody, I think that's going to get you within $100 of.
Let's do it.
How
Well, no,
much?
you can't add $5,000 to Dress for Success.
No, they're staying at 10.
Oh, good point. Hold on.
No, they're
So
not.
that would be.
Well, we'll know. It just
Yeah, just keep going through that, Brenda, like you're doing, and let's see where we sit. So that take that one to like 23.5.
Yeah.
And the 2 at the bottom to 22.
See if that gets us there.
it's going to be too much.
Okay, so
let's go back to Eliza's helping hands and make the difference of that
Yeah.
22.5.
And I have to ask a quick question before we move on from this category. If we're running these numbers, what was the thinking from folks? And in full disclosure, I chair the Board of Action for Equity, but it's not just A for E. I'm also looking at IDR, as well. What was the thinking of folks in terms of rating them, below this cutoff of 11?
And our committee scored them lower. Yeah,
Well, the Action for Equity, I think we're going to have to get Patrice or Ben to chime in there.
Yeah, because they have our notes.
So
Well, no, but they had A for E at 6.
Yeah, I see that. I mean,
And the committee had 12.
That's why I'm asking the question as to what the thinking was. Between us and the staff, if you look at IDR and A for E, we've got some low rankings. I'm just interested.
Yeah.
Well, it's the biggest differential.
Yeah. So for mine, IDR, I ranked them low on their application. It just I couldn't figure out what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
That was my low score there for them. And I think because of that, I also gave them maybes in all the other categories.
Okay.
Patrice, can you pull up your summaries on those two? Because I can't find my notes on those.
Well, yeah.
But even with all
Your
that,
note scale.
report, I gave a 7 on IDR.
No, your little summary that you did on each one, it might trigger my.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to share all my scoring on Action for Equity and IDR. I mean, I gave them for IDR 3s on all 4 of the questions, because the city has been a regular funder for IDR, and then for Action for Equity, I scored them a 2 on just how quickly they could implement their program, but then I gave them 3s on the other categories.
You're questioning immediate impact.
Yeah, I had given them a 2 on that category as well, Ben, the expediency.
Yeah, no, I mean, A for E is dealing with a long-term issue of reversing educational inequity. So if you're looking, for direct impact tomorrow, this is a long game that the organization is playing.
But we're in the long-term category, so that shouldn't hurt from that standpoint. I scored them fairly high, so I don't recall. Well, not IDR. I thought that IDR I couldn't figure out what they were going to do.
Yeah, that was my problem with their application. I mean, A for E, I think was ranked pretty high. I'd have to go back and look at that summary sheet, but
IDR's focus has been, for a long time under the general category of anti-racism training, orientation, culture shifting, that sort of thing. And looking at their application here a moment ago, that's kind of where they are directing some of what they're seeking, but they're also trying to shift some of the focus of that. So I would just say that about that.
Well, let's talk a little more about Action for Equity, because it is such a strong organization, and see why it was that maybe we didn't look at it exactly the way we should have.
Well, A for E, our committee ranked it as a 12.
Right, but the staff didn't.
So it was the average that brought it down, and in reverse of that, it was the staff that brought up IDR.
Right.
So I would say if Reverend Ford, if you have a strong proclivity towards one of those, I mean, just one number off, the average is one number off of the imaginary line we drew.
Right.
So if I don't know that, do those two organizations work in tandem with one another, or completely?
Not directly. So as I said, I'm chair of the board of A for E, so that's a very direct involvement and kind of personal investment. IDR is an organization A for E has worked with, but I was raising a general question on those two. Obviously, my deeper investment is in A for E. But IDR has been doing work for a long time in the community. And I know a number of folks who work at that organization very well. So,
Well, I personally think would support some funding for Action for Equity. I just felt like IDR, after I read it twice, I couldn't figure out what they were really going to do with the funds. I mean, I know what the organization does, but it was totally, I just couldn't figure it out.
And I would second that. I have children who are school aged. So I hear I can see a lot of the work happening with Action for Equity and hear a lot of the work that's taking place within the school system. And I know that the school system needs a lot of Action for Equity standing up for what they're doing. So I would funding Action for Equity as well.
Okay, well, it's time for the staffers to pipe in as to why they were so low. Is there any other? I know Ben did, but I mean, on an A for E, we're talking about the city gave him a 6.
Yeah. Crickets.
Did anybody, I mean, Ben, you've spoken to your rationale. Did anybody else from the staff who's on here now, have something to say in this regard? Who scored them?
It's probably more so just about the history and understanding what they've done long term. Are they a trusted organization? And they probably are. It might be just some of the scoring got low for that reason, not based on what they are projecting to do. So,
I mean, to that point, A for E is a newer organization in the community as compared to some other ones that may have been around for 10, 20, 30 years. This organization in a formal fashion has been around for less than 5, but it's had a major impact in the short amount of time that it has been around. So I would just say that.
Does anyone have any issue with including A for E in the funding?
No, not at all. I think
None.
we should.
I don't.
Okay. So if we did that, if we do this, we'll have to take some stuff off of somebody else. But if we put them at, say, 20, that's and then we would say 1, 2, 3, 4.
Can we go down a little bit on Dress for Success just because we weren't really clear how they were going to use their money? So could we give them like 8,000?
I think they've been around for a while, so I really wanted them to get the 10 because they've been around.
Okay.
I'd rather we go down.
But if you did that, if you took the additional 20,000 away from Wells Center, Partnership for Prosperity, Industries for the Blind, Hope, and Eliza, that's going to take $4,000 off of each one of those.
Ooh.
sorry, what did you say that again, Mark?
If you took Hope of Winston-Salem down to 21, that one, what was that? What was that one before?
23.5.
So that would go to 19.5. So maybe 20,000 may be the wrong amount before we do all that, Patrice. 20,000 may be the wrong amount.
May be the wrong amount.
Yeah, maybe that one is a $15,000 number.
Or a 10. It's a new organization.
Which one?
For action, A for E.
Okay.
I mean, it's.
And then you would take $2,000 off of those others. So if you start at the top, or yeah, that one you start there too, 20 for them as well. We would leave Hope to Thrive where it is. When Industries for the Blind would go to 21.5.
Leave Dress for Success.
Yep. And then Eliza and Hope would go to
23 and 20,500.
Yep.
23.
And then 23 to Hope for Winston, that top one would go to 23. And that should get you the
that gets it.
Right amount. How does that strike everyone?
That's good.
I agree.
Okay.
That's good.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Great.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks, Reverend. Hey, man, and make sure the board knows how that happened, sir.
Oh, don't worry. Don't worry. I will.
Look,
All right.
we'll send him to the council meeting that night.
So the next one, this is probably the
I'm not going to any council meeting to deal with the council list. That's not happening.
Yeah, you can say, I need my 5 minutes or 2 minutes to speak.
I got other issues to go to the council for, trust me.
Let me see something
Okay,
here.
let's.
This next one is an interesting one. Let me just look at something real quick. So there are 20 organizations that are in that top grouping right now.
We got to
If
cut.
we cut one, we can give everybody 10 grand.
We got to cut.
We got to
Yeah.
cut.
We got
If we
to
cut, well, how many?
If we cut one off of this, everybody can have $10,000 across the board of those top ones, the top people above 11 or above 10.
Wow. Okay, so let's figure out. Let's just not
Everybody's
take
basically at $10,000 right now anyway on this thing, more or less.
So all the ones that were duplicates, we've already dealt with that, right?
Well, we dealt with
So
Hope to Thrive. Could we remove Hope to Thrive?
Well,
Right.
listen, Triad, whatever, I can't even say it. Restorative Justice says no funding below 15%. Take them off.
Well, so, right, and I just want to say this because the program, first of all, the organization does tremendous work. I'm familiar with their work. They work with 3 other organizations I'm connected to. The challenge here, to Ms. Diggs' point, though, is the 15% that they can allow for still has them looking for $55,000
Exactly.
to fund this social worker. And so, I just don't know that we can justify doing that for anybody in this category, given the limited funds. I do think there needs to be a conversation, that probably is outside of our scope, just as to how else they can get this funded. Because I don't know what they would do with $10,000 towards, this.
Right.
So.
The other thing I think we can look to take off is Trellis Supportive Care. They have money and access to more money.
Yeah. That one I highlighted because of their annual budget. I also highlighted Crossmore, and I know they do a lot of good work, but they've got a $20 million budget.
I was going there next.
Okay.
Because they have the ability to get funds.
Yes.
Can we go ahead and put how many people are going to be touched by each one so that we're also kind of looking at that?
Well, we already know about Trellis. I mean, we know about their support.
Oh, no, I'm fine with that being removed.
Oh, okay.
So are we saying, just to make sure I'm clear, we remove Trellis or take it to 0, take Cross North to 0, and take Triad Restorative Justice to 0?
That's what we're proposing, yes.
Okay.
Well, if you don't take Triad Restorative Justice to 0, you're going to get them near 15%.
Well, I think what we were saying with that is they still got to go find $55,000.
Yeah.
And which in my experience with fundraising for nonprofits, 55 is just as hard to get as 65.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the issue is the least they can get from us to be able to do their thing is 55, Brian. That's the point. Giving them 10,000, I just don't know what they do with it.
Okay.
So I'll have a conversation with them offline once we have, finalized all of this, about that particular thing.
And I'm going to raise another issue. And that is grace.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I'm not comfortable given what we know. And so I question.
Can you elaborate on that? Brenda, what do you say, given what we know? What do we know?
What don't I know?
What do we not know, Brenda?
They've been in the media because they had a very unfortunate, dishonest person to take the church to the cleaners.
Ooh.
And as a good steward of money, is this the time for us to get involved? And I'm in full disclosure, those of you who know me, I'm gonna lay it out there.
Well, so Here's the thing about Grace, and Brenda's absolutely right. It was a very bad situation. They had a lay leader that fleeced them. And I knew the pastor who was serving there, who was not there anymore, but who was trying to tell them this, and they didn't want to listen for years. The question, I think, will have to be, if we feel like the program itself merits it, the due diligence side, been relative to what financial controls they have put in place at this point, right? I mean, that lay leader is no longer there, no longer in position, he's under federal indictment, all that kind of stuff.
No, I do. Yeah, I understand all that, but to your very point, we don't know about any of the controls. And, I know that he took them. I mean, the church was rendered absolutely poor.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean,
and it did play out in the media. So
it did, and it was a long time coming because that story was not new, so to speak. But I think that would be the question, Ben. And I'm not privy to that because my contact and connection was the former pastor who's not there anymore. I do know that they have been going around looking for support, frankly, in part because of their financial situation now, for some of their programming so they can continue that. So the question is, what internal controls have they put in place to protect these funds, given what they've been through? And the answer may be satisfactory, but I think any award to them would have to have a big asterisk of contingency next to it.
Well, it also is publicized. It has the other downside of somebody in the community questioning the city's intent as to why they would do this, given the situation.
It could just be to help them out of an unfortunate situation.
Right. So if I could, I just...
Say that again, Brian. Or you think you're frozen? No, you're not.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, it sounds like a horrible story for the church, but the congregation itself, again, even with Reverend Ford's comment that they kind of should have known. That's troubling, but they may just really need the money right now to keep whatever programs they want to keep going for their community intact. I mean, I'm not saying that this forum is the right place for the money, but I'd hate not to give them money that's truly needed because they were fleeced.
Well, Brian, you're right. I think the question is how we, address the public perception issue, which is what Brent, I think, is rightfully bringing up. And then obviously is the other issue relative to verifying internal controls. But I think Ben was getting ready to speak to that. So
go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to share that, they did receive a COVID-19 response fund grant last spring. And I will share with you that they have been providing the regular monthly reports that are required of them through their agreement with the city. So that's both their program reports and their financial reports. And in our form of agreement with these agencies, I mean, the city has the right to go in and audit the organizations if we feel like there's calls for that. And we also require the agencies to provide some kind of, whether it's an audit or independent financial review at the end of the term. That's also part of the agreement. So we have recently provided funding to the church, I've not received any concerns from the community about them receiving funds.
Reverend Ford, Brendan, do you know how big the existing congregation is?
It's a small congregation.
It's very small. And it's older.
Yes. It's one of the historic Black Presbyterian churches in the city. It's an older congregation. It's a smaller congregation, but in part because of the leadership of their prior pastor and also just others, they have, they did initiate a lot of good programs. And I think you can see that just in the application. So, I'm satisfied from what Brother Ben just said in terms of we funded them before. Since this scandal, there's been no red flags. The city can, provide audits, all that type of stuff. I think as long as there's transparency about that and the program is merit-worthy, you're absolutely right, Brian. This is what they have to rely upon at this point while they recover financially.
I totally agree. And the city staff had them 12. You guys who did the homework had them at 12. I mean, it seems like a pretty steady across the board. If we're not afraid of the money being misused, I think it's a good use of the money to help out an older congregation with an older church who fell upon some hard times.
Yeah. Well, and they do these community feeding programs and all. So they're really doing anti-poverty, healthy eating kind of programs. I mean, it seems like they're very valid what they're trying to do. And then this youth mentorship.
And that was why I think we gave them the COVID money.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they do partner with Hope to Thrive as well.
Well, and one of our committee members' husband used to be the pastor there years back. She's not on the meeting, on the call.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Ms. Stevenson, I believe.
Yeah, Mabel.
Yeah, Ms. Stevenson.
Years back. I mean, it has a rich history in the Black community, and it is unfortunate as to what's happened, but that's another historical moment.
That's a nice way to put it.
But in the interest of full disclosure and transparency, we need to know, because you need to know when you get backlash.
Yeah.
I think it was that this conversation has been a very good one.
Yes, agreed.
So I think,
where are we?
Let's try to do this and let's see where we stand. So Patrice, for the top 4, the ones that are 13s, can you put those in at 12,500? And then for the 12s, let's put 11,500.
Well, let everybody know I've got to jump off shortly before noon because I've got
okay, but the lead girls only wants 10. Let's put 10 there.
Which one?
Lead girls.
Yep.
Line 9. We don't want to give more.
Right.
And then for the bottom ones there, let's put those at 10,500. See where that sets us. Close. All right,
So
$8,000.
Hope to Thrive would be getting funded twice. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is a different request in this particular category.
And then we had also highlighted Nueva Vida, New Life.
Oh, that's right.
On this one. So I don't know.
Thank you. Yeah, that's down below, Patrice. We had highlighted that to come back and talk about it. Maybe we give them the 8.
Give them the 8. Can't we give them 10?
We could take 2,000 from someone else, but yes, we could.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, if you did that, if you made New Life 10,000, how many do we have that are 11s?
Bunch.
Take 500 from each of them.
Yeah.
Make all the.
No. There's 5.
Yeah.
Well, take. It's fine. How much you need?
We need to take $2,000.
Take 250 from if you take 250 from them, see if you can take 250 from the 10-5s as well.
Well, what's 250 times 5?
1,500.
Okay, so we're just well, so all right, I hear your point. Yeah, so let's just do that. Take 250 from the 10-5s and 11-5s and see what that leaves us with.
Yeah, and let's just see what we get.
Hey, may I interject real quick?
Sure.
I just got an email from the director of annual giving at Trellis, and she just said, I think she's watching on the YouTube, city's YouTube channel, and she just wanted to make it clear to you all that while Trellis has a large budget, that's because of the Medicare funds that they receive for patient hospice care. And that and the grant application that they submitted is focused on funding for unreimbursed expenses. So I just wanted to just pass that along.
Thank you for sharing. What is that? Where are we?
That put us at 200 right
now. The 11-5's got to go to 11.
We need $500.
You need.
We need 5.
Take it from Grace.
We'll take $100 off of each of the 11-5s to 11-4. I mean, I'm just trying to make it be kind of across the board.
Just take it from one.
Take it from, I
Right.
think we should take it from Grace.
Yeah, take it from Grace.
So in light of, I guess 200, so in light of Ben's comment, do we need to have further discussion on trellis?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay. All right.
So where are we?
So that gets us to where we need to be in terms of the correct amount allocated in every category based on all the discussion that we've had.
Great.
So the question is everybody on, from a committee member standpoint, is everybody comfortable with the allocations that we've made?
I think we vetted it quite a bit, so I'm comfortable.
I'm comfortable.
Well,
All right. So what I would like to do then is, before everybody has to jump off at noon, let's go ahead and take a vote. It'll need to be a roll call vote on acceptance of this recommendation as Patrice has it depicted on the screen here.
Yeah, Mark, one
yes, sir.
thing, just I shot an email to the city attorney, but I think we had this happen back in the spring. We probably want to those who are on boards to be excused from voting on those particular
Right.
grants.
Mm-hmm. You're correct.
Absolutely.
So I think we could, single those out, have them excused, vote on those grants individually, and then do the remainder as one roll call vote.
Okay. So let me make sure. I heard that Brenda, you're on the board of Industries for the Blind. Reverend Ford, you're on the board for A4E.
that's correct.
Are there others that are on boards of any of the organizations that are to be awarded?
No.
Or to be
No.
recommended, I guess?
No.
I'm not currently on any of those boards either. Okay, so let's start with those two. Let's start with the Industries for the Blind. And I don't remember what that particular amount was. Can you scroll down to where they were?
So Mark, if you could just very quickly excuse Brenda from the voting and then vote.
Yeah, I was going to see what the number was there. Make sure I knew what I was doing. What category was it? Am I missing it? I think it's up higher.
Top one.
Right there.
There it is.
Somewhere. Yeah, right. Where was it? I saw it.
No, it's down in the next category, I think.
Yeah, it's in long-term anti-poverty social justice.
There it is. Okay.
21.5.
So Brenda, I'm going to excuse you from this particular vote, but this vote is only for the recommendation that the Winston-Salem Industries for the Blind be awarded $21,500 in the long-term anti-poverty social justice strategies category. It's in Patrice, will you or Ben call the roll, and we'll do it vote that way?
Let's do a motion and a second on that, Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So moved. This is Gail.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Moved by Gail, seconded by Melissa. And now we'll do a roll call vote on that one.
Okay. Gail Anderson,
Aye.
Mark Dunnigan,
Aye.
Brian Heelan,
Aye.
Reverend Ford,
Aye.
Melissa Vickers.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Brenda, you're back in. Reverend Ford, you're out. All right, so the next
You hurt me, Mark. You hurt me.
So the next vote is for Action for Equity, which I think is I think it was in long-term as well. See, that's right below the line there. Yep. So this vote is to recommend that Action for Equity be awarded $10,000 in the long-term anti-poverty social justice strategies category. I'll need a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. See, Patrice, if you'll call the roll.
Mark Dunnigan,
Aye.
Gail Anderson,
Aye.
Brenda Diggs,
Aye.
Melissa Vickers,
Aye.
and Brian Heelan.
Aye.
Thank you. And I think the rest of them, Ben, unless you tell me something differently, we can vote on the rest of it as a whole slate with those two removed, correct?
That would be fine.
Okay. So then
Unless you want to form them individually.
Say it again.
I was just joking. I said, unless you want to vote for them individually.
No, thank you.
We'd have to come back on Friday. So this last vote will be to recommend to City Council that the grants that are identified on this spreadsheet that we have on the screen now would be recommended to City Council in these amounts, with the exception of the Winston-Salem City or Industries for the Blind grant and the Action for Equity grant.
So move.
Second.
Okay. Patrice, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Gail Anderson,
Aye.
Mark Dunnigan,
Aye.
Brian Heelan,
Aye.
Reverend Ford,
Aye.
Brenda Diggs,
Aye.
Melissa Vickers.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to thank all of you for the amount of time you've spent today, but also the amount of time you spent reviewing these. I know it was no small task. A lot of good work that's going to happen with the money that ultimately will go to these organizations, and we and the city in turn thank you for your service in doing this. If there are no additional comments, I will call the meeting to close.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
This meeting is
all.
adjourned.
Great team effort.
Yes.
God bless you all.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.